So let me get started. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about SLL Toolkit. So this is one of the open source libraries that I have created over the past few years. So to give a short introduction about myself, I'm Karthik Abiram. I've been using LabVIEW for over 12 years. I am a CLA and a CTA, and I am a LabVIEW champion. So let me get started with how to install the SLL Toolkit, right? So it is available in VA Package Manager. It supports LabVIEW 2016 and greater versions. You can just search for SLL and you will see an item called SLL Toolkit, and you can just straight away install it from VIPM. And it supports all LabVIEW versions from 2016 and greater. Next is, once you have installed it, there are a couple of places where you can find the useful tools and reusables present. So one is from the tools menu. So from tools, you will see an item called SLL Toolkit, and you will have a bunch of tools that you can straight away start using after installation. And the other is in the functions palette. So this, it will be available under the add-ons. You will have an SLL Toolkit as a palette, and inside that you'll be having a various reusables that you can straight away use from the block diagram. So these are the two primary places you will find all the tools that we are going to talk about available. So yeah, let me start with the first one, right? So let's say you have a CSV file, and sometimes I think you might have always faced this, right? If a particular cell has a comma, or let's say if it has a new line, then it messes up the entire file. You will not be able to parse it, and you'll have those kinds of trouble with the default read spreadsheet file operation. So we have a open source, we have this reusable where it parses that correctly. Like if you take Excel, even if you have a CSV extension, if you have a new line character, or if it's having commas within the cell, it will still parse it and render it correctly. So the similar implementation is what we have done here. So here with this tool, if you even have commas or new line characters within your file, it will be able to correctly parse it and display it how we are seeing it on the right hand side. So this is the first reusable I wanted to share. I think this is something that has been very handy for me. The next is the vice versa. So let's say you have a 2D string array which has new line characters or commas, and you want to save it as a CSV file. You have to do some special characters to make sure that it gets saved properly, even for it to open properly in Excel. So for that, we have the vice versa operation, which just does this. The connector pane is very similar to the default LabVIEW palette. You can just straight away replace it, and you'll be able to straight away start using this. So with this, you'll be able to save a CSV file with new line characters, with commas, with double quotes. So those are all expect to be supported. Yeah. So the next is there are a few tools that I have created for comparisons. So first is just comparing two folders. Let's say you have two folders. For some reason, you have taken a backup, or you wanted to just quickly check what is the actual difference between these two folders, right? There are some off-the-shelf tools available, but due to licensing and other reasons, you may not have always be able to go and install it in any system that you want. That is why I felt it is a bit handy to quickly create a tool which does this very basic operation. So what it does is it calculates the CRC, and with the CRC, it actually compares and then decides what all are modified, added, or deleted. So this is a compare folders option. And the other one is compare VI folder. So basically what this does is it doesn't just do a strict LabVIEW comparison, the file comparison using CRC. It does a VA comparison, like you can ignore cosmetic changes and still see is there any actual functional changes between two VIs from two different folders. So it internally uses the LabVIEW compare tool to make this choice. It will rename one of the files, and it will do the comparison, and it will give you what all are actually modified here. So this is the comparison option for two VA folders. And this one is, so we usually have like a 4 numbers for the version number, right? And we want to sometimes compare whether a version number is greater or smaller. So this one is something that is handy that you can straight away use, where it will also handle the number of digits being different between the version 1 and version 2, but still it will properly compare and give you which is greater. So this is another useful thing that has been handy. And this one, so this is, if you just do a normal string sort, right, it will actually say that file 1, file 10, file 2. So it will not actually consider that file 10 should come after file 9. It will put it straight away after file 1 and before file 2. So instead, sometimes we want to do a proper sort where the file 10 comes after file 9 and not before file 2. So this one does this alphanumeric sorting where it considers cases like this and it will be able to sort it in the order that we typically want to have. So this is an alphanumeric sorting. The next is a bunch of tools that I've created for debugging and logging purposes. So sometimes in LabVIEW source code, you can just put a probe and you can see what data is there. Sometimes you will see an issue only in exe and not in source code. And either you can do it, you can do a debug, have it a debug enabled and tie it to a LabVIEW and then see it. But sometimes I just feel it quite handy if I can just put a pop-up and just see what is happening, right? And sometimes if I have a cluster, I have to format it to actually frame this pop-up, and which is something that I wanted to quickly do, right? So what this tool does is you can wire any cluster to this pop-up window, and it'll automatically convert it into a JSON string and display it as a normal LabVIEW pop-up. So this is something that is handy if you want to quickly debug something as in an executable without dealing with going with the debugging option enabled, which sometimes is a bit tricky for very large EXEs. So here you can just wire anything to it. It just takes a variant as input and it will automatically convert it into a string and then display it. And even you can put multiple pop-ups and you will also have an option to say suppress further pop-ups. You can even put this pop-up inside a for loop. And let's say you keep on getting the pop-up and once you get whatever you want, you can say suppress, you will not get any more pop-ups. So that is also a bit something that is useful. The next person is time profile logger. So this is sometimes we want to profile how much time a different sections of code are taking, something just for our analysis purposes, right? So here, this is something that does this without having a lot of overhead. Like for example, if you want to, without doing a lot of wiring and also with a lot of overhead. So what this does is every time when you drop this VI, you can put a tag for that particular location. It will keep remembering what is the millisecond value in which that code got executed at that point. At that time, it will not do any file logging. But finally, you will do a final call called flush and close. That is when it actually gets logged to the file. So this does this operation with minimal wiring and with minimal overhead. So this is something that if you want to quickly profile the time taken, this is something you can consider using. Other one is sometimes we want to have the timestamp as part of the file name, and the default one, whatever we get from LabVIEW, usually has these slashes and colons, which is not supported as part of file name. So instead, this is something that we always have this problem, right? Whenever we want to have a file with the timestamp, you can't straight away use something. You have to do some parsing. You have to remember all these notations. So I just created a VI where I can have straight away get the current timestamp in a format that can be part of the file name. And you can also have different options, whether you want how the data format to be. You want it first as a year or the short form or the other formats. Yeah. The next is sometimes we want to do a bunch of repeated operations. Like for example, for a particular VI, let's say if you want to have this, let's say debugging property enabled, or you want to check something on a particular folder. Let's say you want to see is the execution property is it set to reentrant or not, right? And you want to have a particular folder and you want to check it for every VI in that folder. So any operation that you want to do on a particular VI in a folder, you have to write some code to actually pass through and run through all the VIs, open it and do it, right? So this is just a template where you can just straight away just implement in the innermost flat sequence structure. You can implement what is the functionality that you want, and then you can straight away get started implement. You don't need to worry about all the other boilerplate code. So this just iterates through all the VS in a folder and then takes care of saving it, closing the reference, all those stuff it takes care. Okay, so this one is more about sometimes what I want is I want to I usually have PPLs where I want to have child plugins, and sometimes I want to go to a directory and get a list of supported child classes for a particular parent class. So this VI takes care of that. I can give a top level directory and I can tell what is the parent class I am expecting. What this does is it will automatically iterate and find out all the classes, just either as a normal class or classes within a PPL, and it will return me the list of child classes for this particular parent class. So this is something that is handy when you want to deal with like plugins where you have a child class and you want to get the list of supported child classes for a particular parent class. Yep. The next one is this is the DVR API generator. So usually classes in LabVIEW are data based. It's not reference based, but for some reason you might want to have a reference based class implementation. And that means that you typically have to put a DVR. I mean, you have to create a DVR for your class, and then you have to create a wrapper method for every class method. So this tool takes care of creating all those wrapper methods automatically. So you can just, let's say you have a normal class with like 5 methods. You can just load the class. You can say what is the method folder. And once you run this, it will automatically create the DVR based methods for all those items. And the right side is it will automatically take care of wiring and everything. It will make sure that for each of your method, you have a DVR based API available for you straight away. So this is also available from one of the tools that is available from the tools menu. Okay. So the next one is saving. I sometimes I want to have a template project. I want to instantiate it and rename some of the libraries and classes. So this was one of the scenarios I had in one of the project where we had to do a renaming like 3 or 4 times within a project. And I felt I wanted to have something that is very easy to use without writing a lot of boilerplate, without writing a lot of code. So this takes care of that. Currently, it supports renaming of libraries and classes within a project. You can say, given a template project, you can say these are all the library names or the items that I have, and this is what I wanted to rename it to. Once you run this, it automatically takes care of instantiating a new project with those classes along with relinking them. The next is some in the same similar scenario, right? Let's say you have a build specification, but now you have to go to the build specification and there will be a number of things that you have to rename, which I not want to do manually. So instead, this is a very quick option where I had the terms to be in like a tag format, and I just found that LabVIEW project is just a text file, right? So what I can just do is I can just do a string replace and it'll automatically replace all these things. So this is the other part where if you have some build specification and you want to rename some of the templates to something else, this is something that is useful. But one thing to notice is that the GUI ID or the other things, let's say for an installer, is something that will be very specific and you need to regenerate it. But for normal EXEs, it is fine. You can just use it and replace it. But for installers, you should make sure that you regenerate the GUI ID. So this is another option. These two, the project save as and these two options together, you can use it for instantiating a new project from a template without manually going and renaming stuff. Okay, so the next one is sometimes we want to run a VI from a project instance because we'll be using the get application directory path, and that will be with respect to the project. Running the VI directly without opening the project will not work as desired. So in those cases, this is a VI where you can say what is the project path and what is the VI path, and it automatically takes care of opening the project and running it. Let's say if you want to have instead of let's say you want to, for some reason you want to give a source code to the user and they want to just double click and run it, but your code actually requires it for the project to be open and open the VI from the project to run it. What you can do is you can create a launcher VI where you can simply state this is the project path and this is the VI path, and user can still double click the launcher and it will take care of opening the project and running it from there. Okay. And the other one that has been recently added to the SLL Toolkit is the code comparison tool for Git by Satish. And we do have a separate dedicated session for it at later today. Don't miss that one. That is I would say that is one of the useful things that we have been able to save a lot of time, especially when reviewing code with Git, especially with PRs. So this is something that was very useful. And finally, yeah, so this is a completely open source project. This is available in GitHub. Anybody can contribute. And if you find any issues, please raise a ticket issue there in GitHub. And if you want to contribute any tools, or if you want to iterate or work on implement some additional feature over the existing tools, you are most welcome. And we have like so far here, we have these are the past contributors for this tool so far. And yeah, thanks everybody.